So will the detriment of Republic Day. So it could be Republic Day could suffer also. But the point is that there are two significant events, and I think government will, having taken that decision to celebrate them on the same day, will have to do whatever is necessary to ensure that both events are equally, perhaps, properly recognized and celebrated, and that furthermore, they will need now to be able to resolve the confusion that may arise on that day. And again, I look forward to see how that will be resolved. But be that as it may, I am happy to see the country now prepared to move forward. And I am therefore prepared to support this resolution, this bill.
Thank you very much,
I am obliged,
Senator.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Boyce.
Good evening, Mr. President, and thank you for your invitation to join in this historic discourse. You know, Mr. President, I think we have had a few of these in this and the other location where we were based. And I wonder, sir, if we knew then what we know now, if some of us would have made the same choices. The energy which we currently have, sir, is somewhat diminished by the quantum of government senators present. I would assume, sir, that is due to the many facets and obligations which they embrace. Given the importance of the debate, I thought, though, that they ought not to leave their leader of today, Senator McConney, Minister McConney, alone, but I think perhaps they're also maybe confident that she remains in good hands while here with us. Now, sir, when I reference the energy of the debate, it's not in an attempt to be whimsical, but observation. Firstly, the reference to republic, what it means. We hear the historic, we hear the anecdotal, we hear the nature. But what we don't see in the draft legislation is a definition. Perhaps it exists in another form, another place, but not in the draft that we have. So when I look at the definition from the legal dictionary of what a republic is, and I'm citing, sir, the legal dictionary, the free one, sir, which anyone could access, is that a republic is a form of government in which the administration of affairs is open to all the citizens. Does it not then, sir, seem like there could be possibly much ado? As currently, the government which exists is one which is open to all citizens? That's legality, sir, and that is a question. Another question, sir, is where we derive the word. Republic, derived from the Latin res publica, or public thing. Citizens in this system are supposed to conduct their affairs for their own benefit rather than for the benefit of a ruler. Is that not what we have been doing here in Barbados, Mr. President? But maybe that's semantics. So technically, sir, we could be whimsical and wax philosophically and say, what is in a name? Perhaps an independent nation with a foreign head of state would not smell as sweet, Mr. President. But I'm enjoying myself at the moment. And I will say, sir, that the absence of the Deputy Speaker is somewhat galling because we have had a republic in Barbados, in St. Philip, for a number of years. And anyone who doesn't recognize that doesn't understand Barbados, Mr. President. Self-determined. But, sir, in all seriousness, I think it's important that the government listen to the concerns as laid out by Senator Drakes and I believe Senator Hunt with regard to other matters which could be considered more pressing than this current debate, sir. I will mention the COVID cases, sir. Maybe I'll find a way to get to that soft touch discussion we had previously, sir. I will mention the economy, sir, the rising debt burden, sir, and the other issues. But while we recognize that there are other matters which need resolving, we also recognize that there is never going to be a convenient time for change. And a change like this is momentous, seismic. Yet the energy which is being reflected presently, sir, captures the comments and the warnings being echoed by the impartial observer, sir, that may be reflective of a populace who, due to the burden of the current situation, sir, are not as engaged as they ought to be or as we would wish them to be, sir. For my part, sir, there is never going to be a convenient time. And for those who say, why do it now? I could imagine the refrain of the government to be, if not now, then when? And of course, sir, since we're heading towards our republic status, I think we should embrace the colloquial and perhaps say what will happen in a week does happen in a day, or is it a year, or whatever the relevant timeline is to bring the distinction. Sir, I think also that we must be cognizant that the Barbados which we represent inside this house, sir, is not just the Barbados of our ancestors when we speak reflectively with regard to from whence we came, but is the Barbados which encompasses every single citizen, despite color, despite creed, despite socioeconomic status. And in having this discussion, we must be cognizant that there are some who hold to the historic ties because of what they would have known as they grew under the Union Jack, and that we must be cognizant in the debate that we have that we must also let their voices be considered. But certainly, sir, queries with regard to the haste as to how we got here, certainly valid. Certainly valid. But the point is, as set out by my brother, Senator Nurse, we are here now. And sir, there are a number of issues with regard to how we got here, but perhaps the answer to that is that perfect is the enemy of good. So now we're here, what do we do? And I'm going to come to that, sir. I also believe, sir, that as we frame this debate, and watch me get disowned by a certain segment of the population, sir, this debate cannot be about the father of independence. I also believe, sir, that as we frame this debate, watch me get disowned by the other segment, sir, it cannot be about Sir Grantley Adams. It cannot be about our current Prime Minister. I suggest, sir, that this debate is about the future of Barbados and the future we leave for the children of this nation. It is on that basis, sir, that I think it is impossible for there to be an ideological opposition to the move to a republic. Let me say that again. When we consider the future and the future we leave for the children of this nation, I believe that there can be no ideological opposition to the move to republic status. With you, sir. Now, sir, having given the preamble and what I propose to be the context, there are issues which I wish to delve somewhat, but not too deeply, sir. The first thing is the legal process. We spoke about how we got here, but in terms of the draft of the bill, or the bill itself, is no law, which is currently before us. There have been questions raised, sir, by various persons in various places with regard to the document. Now, sir, a bit of history. There was a class in law school called legal drafting, and I think out of the 40 persons in the class, only 2 enjoyed it. It's a very technical subject within which you have different proponents, different positions, different schools of thought, different styles. Now, sir, when I say that we have heard the commentary where some have thought that the process currently being utilized by the legislation, which is posited as implication with regard to the incorporation of the Constitution from document A to document B, raises the question of legal challenge. Others, sir, and the rejoinder has been no. This is an express power as set out in in clause 4. For my part, sir, I take comfort that the intention of Parliament is clear, and there's a reason I'm saying these words, sir, that there is no repeal of the Constitution save for the changes herein to have a new head of state and the attendant changes. And the reason I make these statements, sir, is because we know how things go. And in our present role as legislators, we are reminded not to put on our interpretation hats. That's for the courts. And the courts, we have seen, sir, have been quite willing to intervene as necessitated or as necessary. So, sir, I am informed and I'm aware of the discussion by the various academics in this regard. And for my part, I can say that while I can see both sides, once we are clear as to the intention to preserve the Constitution, I am comforted. Another theoretical concern that has been raised, sir, is the senators who were appointed pursuant to 36-4, of which I am proud to be one, sir, and being part of this debate. How is it that you are debating in a scenario where you're essentially referencing a power which is relevant to an authority who you essentially were appointed by? The first response to that, sir, is that technically all senators are appointed by the Governor General. Indeed, sir, we all at the appropriate time might be considered oath breakers. Oath breakers, sir. You weren't here, sir, but in a previous speech I went down the road on oaths, sir. And I spoke about in the English utilization of oaths, when a Protestant leader came in, you had to swear oath that you renounce the Catholic beliefs. And then when the Catholic leader came in, you swore off that you renounce the Protestant. Dare I say, history has a habit of repeating itself. But that's a theoretical, philosophical problem, and perhaps I'll invite my brother, Senator Dr. Rogers, to advise on that if it gives me any concern later. Sir, the issue is, the second answer to that query with regard to whether we are capable of having such an independent discourse is, I believe, it underestimates the caliber and personal integrity of the members who sit within this chamber, sir. Now, sir, On the issue of process, I thought it very prudent when Senator Hunt spoke about the concept that there is precedent for saying what we are first and then working out the nuts and bolts of the process. I think the term he used was donkey before the cart, sir. And again, we appreciate the colloquial expression. Sir, at the end of the day, the result of this exercise, the resulting document, and the processes and challenges which arrive will provide the answer. I think, sir, that since we don't know what tomorrow will bring, I believe it's somewhat arrogant to dismiss fears or to even be excessively jubilant in this regard. And when I was trying out metaphors, sir, you know, we have the English, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I was speaking to one of the Malton Hill poets, sir. You would hear me mention them from time to time. And when I said that since we're moving towards embracing what is ours, I thought about the proof of the sauce is in the mouth, but it didn't have the same ring, sir, in terms of getting the point across. But I'm going to work on it. Sir, a concern, though, which I think echoes that which is referenced by Senator Drakes and which I spoke to with regard to the energy. I see the government ranks have begun to bolster, sir. So I am happy. I am happy. Is that my anecdotal, sir, experience in seeking to poll colleagues, friends, family, workmates, even some senators, the man on the ground as such, sir. There's almost, sir, and I'm saying this to invoke the debate and see how we can do better, almost a nonchalance with regard to the exercise that we're doing, sir. Sir, you'd have heard me mention the notorious group chat, and I try to use it, sir, my friends and family, to give me an understanding as to what are the type of conversations taking place, accepting that these are anecdotes, sir. Sir, you have allegations that this is but political machinery. This is but a distraction. This is a build-up to election, sir. Sir, when you hear this type of dialogue, recognizing that there always will be this dialogue, we need to take stock and be mindful. We need to make sure that we do more than just adopt a symbolic step, but ensure that the representative audiences within the society are reached. You recall, sir, about the mention I made with regard to what we define as the Barbadian society. That's all races, all creeds, every socioeconomic demographic. Sir, the phrase a young scholar by the name of Rashad Braffett told me, he's at the University of West Indies, he did an internship with us, very bright fellow. He said, sir, we need to be able to make sure as we get our message out that we use the same disruptive communication method of social media, which was utilized so well for other campaigns. Start of COVID, some will say even in some elections. The point of the matter is this, sir. Constitutions, and again, this is young Mr. Braffett from one of his articles, are emblematic documents that tell the story of a people. What I wish to add, Mr. President, is that hopefully at the end of this process, this embryonic constitution in which we are discussing develops to a fully healthy baby which meets the definition. That is, a constitution which tells the story of the Barbados people. It creates a republic that captures the need and fulfills the desire and dreams of all Barbadians, sir, from all racial, religious, and socioeconomic backgrounds, and that we create a participatory, consultative Barbados for all. Sir, I know it sounds like these are wishes, but that's the point of having a vision and seeking to join in the discourse. Let's aim for higher, let us do better, and I thank you for your indulgence, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Boyce. Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought I heard on the side, and when I was listening to Senator Boyce, and he said that he was referencing friends and family, and he said that what was being done was did I get it correct, a red herring and just political and all that. I was about to ask him which family member it was he was speaking with, but then I decided, Mr. President, I would keep that to myself.
Thank you.
I do not intend, sir, to keep this Senate long. No, I really don't. The truth is, sir, that I could not, in such an important debate, sit and not give my support to this. Sir, I have a friend. He has an extremely big house in Kingsland. A massive house, sir, he has in Kingsland. But when he started to build that house, what he did first of all was to build literally what I call a shell. Because what happened, sir, was that he only lived in upstairs in a small section of the house. And for years, sir, he added a little piece, he did a little something. It took him maybe about 10 years to fully complete the house. But he has, sir, a massive house. The reason why, sir, I reference that is that I think it is important for us to recognize that the journey that we are on is not a journey that can often be completed in a short period of time. But it is a journey, sir, that has to be completed. Mr. President, when I listen to the contributions in this debate, unless I have not been hearing properly, I have not heard a single senator indicate that they're not supportive of Barbados going to a republic. In fact, sir, when I listen to the public discussions, I don't recall, and maybe I have missed it, I don't recall any persons defending a position of Barbados remaining with a system that is essentially a monarchy. In fact, sir, I asked myself the question if there are any monarchists left in Barbados, because I do recall, I don't know, sir, I'm just asking, I do recall that, or I should say it, sir, that I am old enough to recall that there were discussions where individuals vigorously defended the position of Barbados continuing to have the relationship with the Queen. That is not happening now in Barbados. The questions that people are asking are questions related to the methodology that is being utilized. Sir, I'm of the opinion that we will never be able to get everyone to be on the same page. I am comforted, though, by the fact that over the last, I'll say 26 years, the major political parties in this country, the Barbados Labour Party, the Democratic Labour Party, have both signaled to Barbadians the need for us to go to the stage of becoming a republic. And this bill, sir, before this honorable chamber, does not in any way subtract from the ability of Barbadians to have the discussion with respect to the Constitution. Some may argue, is this a chicken or an egg situation? But the government has made the determination that Going to a republic by the 30th of November of this year is the direction in which we will go. Mr. President, I have to confess that I have absolutely no difficulty with that. I believe, sir, that we have to have confidence in ourselves to be able to go to the next step. And I heard Senator Dr. Lynette Holder speak to the issue of fear. And fear, sir, is something that I think is real. I remember, sir, reading about, and I may have said it in this chamber before, reading about President Nelson Mandela. In fact, I believe it appears, sir, in his autobiography. And he was leaving South Africa to fly somewhere. And he got on a plane. And the pilot was a black African pilot. And Nelson Mandela found himself wondering if this person could really fly the plane and if this person could really make the trip, and wondering if this person was really a worthwhile pilot. And he recognized that he was internalizing the negative stereotypes about black people. And this, sir, is the man who was at the forefront of fighting apartheid. But he was internalizing this. Sir, let us be confident in ourselves. I heard, sir, Minister Cummings make reference to the mirror image speech by Errol Barrow. I was fortunate, sir. I hope I'm not dating myself, but I was fortunate, sir, to be there. May 13th, 1986. The mirror image speech, where the right excellent Errol Walton Barrow asked, what mirror image do you have of yourself? But he also asked another question. And this was at the start of the speech. Do you really like yourselves? And I reference that, sir, because I believe that one of the things coming out of becoming a republic relates to our identity as a people. That, sir, I believe is extremely important. Senator Hunt made reference to when he was doing his psychology degree and talking about psychology. And I believe, sir, that he may be familiar with the German-American developmental psychologist Erik Erikson, I believe, sir, who said, sir, in the social jungle of human existence, there is no feeling of being alive without a sense of identity. And I'm saying to this honorable chamber, Mr. President, that this step is allowing us to have a clearer understanding of our identity and who we are as Barbadians. I do not believe, sir, that there's anyone in this chamber that would have sworn allegiance as many times as I have. Mr. President, between 2003 and 2008, as you know, I would have been Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. And I had the privilege of functioning as a temporary minister on numerous occasions. And on every occasion that I functioned as a temporary minister, I had to go to Government House and to swear allegiance. I, Rudy Grant, being appointed the temporary minister, do swear allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth the second her heirs and successors according to law. Why, sir, in this Barbados today, must we be swearing allegiance to someone who is not Barbadian? Let us take pride in ourselves and let us be willing to swear allegiance to our country, Barbados. I think, Mr. President, that is critical and that is important. I've heard questions asked about the manner in which we are doing things. Is this the right way? And I want to ask two simple questions. And I will answer the two questions that I asked. Sir, the first question is this. Is it legal? Is what is taking place here today, sir, and took place in the other place, is it legal? I am not an attorney at law. I am not steeped in constitutional matters at all. Some affinity with knowledge of law. But again, I, like the Deputy President of the Senate, the legal luminaries that have made reference to this issue, I think that we can rely on them. And there's nothing that I have heard that is suggesting that this process is illegal in any way. In fact, sir, I heard a comment made by Senator Franklin. I'm going to come to your comment shortly, Senator Drakes. I'm glad you're back. Glad she's back, Mr. President. I heard a comment made about the fact that legislation came from the UK. And a phrase came to my mind right away. Should you throw out the baby with the bathwater? And I've said in this chamber before, look, we can't erase history. And the good things of the past and the good systems that we have, let us keep them and let us use them to help us to get where we want to go. There are many pieces of legislation, sir, that come before this chamber. And the Attorney General's office, in putting together the legislation, and the attorneys could speak to it better than I can, they look at legislation from different parts of the world. I remember, sir, at a different time, Mr. President, I believe that you would recall as well, there was the development of a new Telecommunications Act. I remember well, sir, who was the minister at that time, responsible and leading, sir, the liberalization of the telecommunications sector. It was a minister by the name, sir, of the Honorable Reginald Farley. And he did a fantastic job, sir, in working to liberalize the telecommunications sector. Here.
Thank you, Senator.
But I remember, sir, working within that ministry, facilitating the drafting instructions, collaborating with the different partners under your leadership, sir, at the time. And I remember as well our meetings with the Chief Parliamentary Council and the different pieces of legislation in different countries that would have been looked at. The point that I'm making, sir, is that there are times when you can look to see what is happening elsewhere and take the positive and the good and utilize it for your own benefit. Nothing, sir, is wrong with that. But the other question I want to ask, sir, is it moral for us to be proceeding in the manner in which we are proceeding? I don't, sir, have the kind of, I know that Senator Drake started by saying that she did not have any fears. But listening to her speech, for me, sir, it sounded as if it was instilling a measure of fear. While she indicated she didn't have fear, she did touch on a number of areas which demonstrated somewhat being fearful. But are we doing something today, sir, that goes against the highest moral standards, sir, that goes against what is right, that is wrong in some way, sir? And I say no. What we are doing is that we are embracing what is necessary in terms of our identity and in terms of having a Barbadian as the head of state and facilitating those of us who serve in these different places, in this chamber and elsewhere, to swear allegiance to our country. And fundamentally, that is what this legislation, sir, is dealing with, you know. This legislation really is not going beyond that, because the government has given a commitment that there will be thorough discussion. If I recall, what I heard, sir, was that it would be for a period of about 12 months, each month a particular subject matter being dealt with, and allowing Barbadians to be able to speak to the different issues with respect to the Constitution. Somebody said today in this chamber, sir, I believe somebody said it in this chamber, or I might have heard it in the meeting I was in, making reference to the Chinese saying, the journey, no, it was in the meeting I was in, sir. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single footstep. This journey started some time ago. It started since independence. In 1979, we know it was the Cox Commission. We know the results of that. We know the history of where this has come from. But this government has taken the bold decision to go ahead and for Barbados to become a republic. And I agree with Senator Holder. Nothing fundamental is going to change. And persons are going to realize that they're still able to properly function and exist in Barbados. So I want to come though to some other matters, because I did hear, particularly in the contribution by Senator Drakes, what could very well be suggested that we were giving priority to the wrong things, and that there were other matters more important than what we are dealing with here today. She made reference, I believe, to national insurance. She made reference, I believe, sir, to youth unemployment. She made reference, I believe, sir, to crime. Listening to Senator Drakes, you may very well get the impression that the government of Barbados is doing nothing to address any of those issues. But that is not the case. That is not the case. And let me say to Senator Drakes that they're not mutually exclusive, a term that I'm sure that she knows well as an economist. So we can pursue the issue of becoming a republic, but at the same time still keep a focus on the economy. I didn't hear. Pardon? Yeah. Well, yeah. You can do that for sure. We can focus, sir, still on the issues of crime. I would not go back, sir, and speak to all that has been done. For example, the equipment at the port, when the government was changed, and what was done, the amount of money spent to ensure that we start to deal with those kind of issues. I wouldn't start dealing with that, sir. I will deal, sir, today, sir, with the fact that the restructuring of the debt in the COVID-19 environment has allowed us, sir, to be able to and have us better equipped to deal with the challenges, sir, that we have. Sir, I wouldn't go to the fact that in 2018, there were only about 4 weeks of foreign reserves. And now there are in excess of 42 weeks of foreign reserves. Sir, the point that I'm making is that, sir, is that becoming a republic does not take the focus of the government away from those critical and important issues. They don't. And we have to be able, sir, to ensure that we create the right type of Barbadians. Sir, I remember, sir, and I talk a lot about, I reference a lot my days as a student at the Lodge School. And when I reflect on my days at the Lodge School, and I reflect on the studies that I did there, sir. Sir, I remember a lot, and I remember being taught a lot about things happening in Rome. I remember, sir, here, in fact, sir, if I had time, it might be good to look in a comparative way in relation to the Tudors of England. I remember that well. I believe it was 1485 to 1603, ruling for 118 years. Sir, the point that I'm making, sir, I remember, sir, Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales. I remember, sir, Shakespeare. I could remember, sir, at one scene one, hang some ye idle creatures, be this a holiday. Sir, the point that I'm making is that we came up in a system that did not necessarily reflect who we were as Barbadians, but crafted an image for us that centered around other people. What we are doing, sir, is seeking to ensure that that Barbadian identity stands out. Mr. President, that is critical and that is important. We have a responsibility, sir, to our youth. We have a responsibility to future generations. Sir, I have to say that while it is not my style, you know, I see young people and they wear these pants down by the knees, right? That's not my style, but that's the young people's thing. I don't have a problem, sir. I don't have a problem with that. That's their style, right? And I believe, sir, I remember well, sir, and I ain't going back to this particular style. Wearing bell-bottom pants and platform shoes. Sir, I ain't care if that style come back again. But we had our own style. I remember how older persons sometimes would take issue with some of the things that we said. Don't have a problem with that. What I have a concern with is what I see as a lack of respect and a lack of understanding who you are, right? Because a lot of younger persons do not fully understand the struggle that Barbados has gone through and that our people have gone through. And we have to make sure that we are able, in that Barbadian identity, to create for them knowledge of where we have come from, where we are, and where we wish to go. Mr. President, you and I, and others, you have spoken with others, and here I believe you have even said it in this chamber, that there was a time many years ago when you first entered this chamber as a young man. And the elders in that chamber, sir, would have been your seniors, of course. Not that you are an elder or old now at all, sir, because you carry yourself, your youthfulness well. But you have indicated, sir, that you have now become them.
Yes, sir.
And that's a fact, right? And you know, we have to be able, in creating the identity, to let our people share in the experiences and understand the experiences that we have had, because that is important. That is extremely important. I want to say to Barbadians, sir, have no fear. There's nothing sinister about this legislation. This legislation today simply is facilitating a Barbadian to become the head of state. It is simply, sir, facilitating where you have to swear allegiance, that you swear allegiance to your country and not to a foreign monarchy. I do want to suggest, sir, that as we have the consultation with respect to the new constitution, that we do find ways to make the manner in which we function as a country more efficient. I've said in this chamber before, I repeat again, many things take too long. In 2008, you have heard me say before, sir, in 2008, we left government and the new cargo facility at the airport was a priority. In 2018, we came back to government. The new cargo facility at the airport was still on the agenda as a priority. And that is not good enough. And I am not, sir, in that way, pointing fingers to a particular political party, not at this time, although the reality is there in terms of the last decade, but I'm not pointing to that, no, sir. What I am saying is that overall, the way in which our government functions, it is something I think that as we talk about the new constitution, that we have to look at. And I want to encourage persons, sir, to do that with an open mind. I have heard that there was suggestion about at the level of senior public officers being facilitated by way of being on contracts. Let us, sir, in this period when we are talking about the new constitution, look at the ways in which we can make our functioning of government better. I can't finish, sir, without reflecting on something that Senator Drake said. Senator Drake's not picking on you today, but you said a lot, and I feel compelled to touch on what you said. You said having the ceremony on Independence Day is offensive. I believe you said that, Senator Drake. I totally disagree with that. In fact, and I want to say in clarity to what Senator Nurse said, it is my understanding that Independence Day will remain Independence Day and that some other day will be Republic Day. I didn't get the sense that there's any intention to have Republic Day on Independence Day at all. I think that was made clear by a statement in the other place. But I do think that nothing is wrong with having the swearing in of the president on Independence Day, because on the 30th of November 1966, Barbados became independent, but we did not go the full way by changing the head of state to a Barbadian. And all we are doing this year is to signal that we have now come of age. And let me say this, sir. We are 55 years now. Sir, I'm a little older than the nation. Just a little. I was born, sir, on the 31st of December, 1964. A good old years night baby. And I have to say, sir, that as an individual, I have gone through some changes in my life. Sir, I don't act and behave now at 56 as I did at 26. I believe I've matured quite a bit. So at 26, I may have wanted to go to every dog fight. Not at 56 years old. Not at all. At 56 years old, sir, You know, I look at life a little different to how I did when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, sir, everything was ahead of me. Huh? Sir, in 11 years, at 67, you retire. So I have less years now working than I would have worked before. But I make that point only to say that as a country, we don't remain with the same kind of outlook and the same philosophy, the same modus operandi. We have to change with the times. And it is about time that we as Barbadians come into our own and that we have a Barbadian as our head of state. And it is good to do it on the 30th of November, Independence Day, to signal to the world a Barbadian is our head of state. And sir, I want to encourage all Barbadians to support this move and to help us on this side, as well as those on the other side. Because I believe that, based on the discussion so far, that a lot of members on the other side support going to a republic. And I want to encourage all the senators, especially Sir Senator Drakes. I want to encourage her that when the vote comes, support this. Support this. You said already, sir, she said already, sir, that she has no difficulty with Barbados becoming a republic. Let us therefore work together to create that identity, and let us work together to seek to ensure that a matured Barbados has a Barbadian as a head of state, and let us collaboratively discuss and talk about whatever the issues are, because I am confident, sir, by that approach that we can find common ground and that we can ensure that Barbados continues to grow, continues to excel, and that Barbadians continue to make Barbados a better place. And sir, as I said, I would not have been long with these few words, sir. I am obliged.
Thank you very much, Senator Grant. I recognize Senator Reverend Dr. Rogers, but before you rise, I ask the Deputy President to take the chair for a few minutes.
Senator Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President, for affording me the opportunity to speak on this bill, which will alter the Constitution of Barbados in order to provide for us to become a republic with a president who shall be head of state of Barbados. Mr. Deputy President, I wish to entitle my short discourse, Why Not Now? Why Not Then? Why not now? Why not then? Just to be able to speak on so momentous an occasion as we deliberate on yet another phase of national development is humbling. As we take this journey towards self-actualization as a people, I cannot help but bore the chamber once again with why I'm so invested in this process. Mr. Deputy President, when I came to this country in 1987 and experienced the services that were offered here to the citizens, I could not help but think then, as I still think now, that this is a great nation and a great people. When I first came here, sir, and I was assigned to the Lodge School, the first thing that struck me when I went to collect my books was the fact that you got all these books, and all these exercise books were next to nothing. And they told you when the exercise book is written out, come back and get another one. That was unheard of where I came from. You bought your own exercise book. You bought your own paper to write your exams on. And I thought that this was a nation that I could grow to love. And I have grown to love it to the point where I feel indebted to it, to the point where I do not believe that I can repay it in this lifetime. It is indeed one of the greatest examples of social democracy in this world. Sometimes when I listen to the election discourses in places that call themselves great, and the discussions that they are having, I cannot help but laud our leaders of the past and the social engineering that they were able to create here to shape this nation. We have a healthcare system that is under stress right now, but it is holding up because of the caliber of the healthcare system that we have. It is holding up because of the caliber of persons involved in the care of others. We have an education system that is under stress right now, but it is holding up. It is holding up because of the caliber of persons who function within it. It is holding up because of the structure that we have shaped. Let us not forget that in 2016, the World Economic Forum had rated Barbados' education system as 9th in the world. That is not something to take lightly. Yes, those of us who are here, yes, just another thing. But that means that we have excelled, at least in one area, on the world stage, and it ought to be commended. So to actually share in this moment, Mr. Deputy President, is a distinct honor. I wish to say from the outset that the move to a republic is not an event. It's a process. It is not an event. It is not something that we have and we light some fireworks and we jump up and we have a party. It is a process. And so, sir, my commitment to this nation led me to kindly accept when I received the call to join the Republican Status Transition Advisory Committee. And I want to commend the members of that committee. They've had a very rough deal. They've been written about in the public. They've had their reputations questioned in public. But over the last few months, I have had the distinct opportunity to sit with some brilliant people and some statesmen and stateswomen of the highest caliber. The particular bill before us, sir, came out of that committee through our legal team headed by no less an esteemed person as Ms. Shirley Bell, QC. And she ably led that team. And sir, I do have a great appreciation for lawyers and what they do. I've learned that every little word matters. And every little word can make a very big difference to what we're dealing with. And it's out of that, sir, that committee soon realized that the restructuring of the Barbadian Constitution cannot be done overnight. It is a process. But we also recognize that there was a gap. We recognize that legislation is not everything, and legislation is probably not what this country needs right now. This country needs a soul. To recapture its soul. To find the depth of what drives us. To recapture the zeal and the spirit of the independence generation. And so we set out working on a charter A charter that would set out the hopes and aspirations of what Barbados hopes to be and hopes to become in the future. How we will treat to each other. How we will see the other person. How for the first time persons who are on the fringes can be brought into the center. And we have had several meetings, numerous meetings, with various interest groups in this country. And sometimes when you sit and speak to these people, sir, you're almost drained emotionally to see what the average Barbadian goes through every single day while we're not paying attention to what they're experiencing. Just sitting and talking with members of the disabled community and the little things we take for granted is a daily challenge for them. And these are the people that we are seeking to touch in this process. In this process, not this event. The charter will help us to lay the benchmark for the constitutional changes that we need to make to become the society we want to be. But it cannot be done overnight. With regard to the bill before us, sir, I have heard the legal minds. I thoroughly enjoyed Senator Boyce's presentation, and he touched on the Church of England and the Roman Catholic bit. And I should say that today is the feast day of William Tyndale, one of the translators of the Bible into English. And he got strangled at the stake because it was felt that the Bible should remain in Latin and the ordinary people should not have it. But thank God, through his work and his zeal, about 80 years later we got the King James Version, and the ordinary man had the Bible in his hand. But that's just an aside. So. The bill before us has been looked over by some brilliant minds, sir. And I will not even attempt to try to trouble it, because I am not versed in the law, and I will not exercise myself in matters that are too high for me.
Senator Rogers?
Yes, sir.
This one.
Continue, Senator Rogers. Thank you.
I will not exercise myself in matters that are too high for me. But as we have heard, there are persons equally brilliant on the other side of this matter who question the process, and it is open to criticism. Everything that has happened here is open to criticism. I wish to make the point that if those who object to this process, either through the substance or the form of this bill, and deem it egregious enough, I would expect them as patriotic citizens to challenge it in a court of law. As for me, Mr. President, I am yielding to the expertise of the legal luminaries who have advised upon and assented to this bill. I do so in the spirit with which Queen Elizabeth I approached the question of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. It was a question for which you could easily die if you got the answer wrong, because it really questioned whether you believed that Jesus was literally present in the bread and wine. And when they asked Queen Elizabeth I about it, she said, well, Christ was the word that spake it. He took the bread and brake it. And what his word doth make it, that I believe and take it. And so, sir, whatever the legal luminaries say, that I believe and take it. I prefer, sir, to utilize my time approaching the bill and the attendant concerns surrounding it from a more philosophical perspective, under the aforementioned theme, why not now? Why not then? Mr. President, the Barbados of which we speak has been and continues to be one of the greatest nations in this world. Over the past 55 years, we have managed our affairs as a people, as a quasi-republic. We are a state in which the state powers lie in the people and their elected representatives. The only difference is we're headed by a monarch rather than a president, and that's all we're seeking to change. So we've already been operating as a quasi-republic for 55 years. And we have had tremendous examples of public servants who went beyond the call of duty. We've seen permanent secretaries who were giants in their own right. We have had politicians and leaders that have inspired us to be our best selves. But, Mr. President, as I mentioned, my first interaction with this country, I've also had the opportunity to see a decline in the fabric of our society. I've seen the zeal of the independence generation wane. I've seen a sense of entitlement in our people. A nation that was built as a model of social democracy. I've seen a disregard for a sense of accountability. I've seen expectations of transparency and accountability diminish over time. And it brought me back to something that happened in 2015. In the year 2014, I preached a sermon at the gymnasium for a diocesan service we had under the theme renewal. I said, you know, there comes a time in the life of every organization, every institution, when we must take a step back and assess where we are. Look at where we've come from, where we are, and determine where we need to go. And I remember receiving a call from Dr. Rudy Webster, the sports psychologist for that victorious West Indies team in the 1980s. He said to me, you know, what you said is precisely what I was telling the West Indies team. That everything in life operates on the basis of the sigmoid curve. And when you get to the top, unless you retool, unless you refocus, unless you reassess, there's only one way, and that is back down. It suggests, sir, that we as a people, I believe, have reached the top of that curve. I believe in the last 55 years, we have journeyed, but we're now at the top of the curve. And as you would know, Mr. President and my fellow senators, my very first speech in this honorable chamber was that we need to recalibrate. We need to recalibrate as a people. Beyond that, I've said we need to press the reset button. I've encouraged us to get back on course. The reason for this, sir, is because there's a measure of urgency for us to reshape our society. It must happen now. Time is not on our hands. The shaping of national identity, the shaping of a nation, usually does not take place in times of peace and quiet. They take place in the crucible of crisis. They take place in the crucible of crisis. The Israelite nation that was under oppression, the yoke of oppression in Egypt, they became a nation in the crucible of crisis. First, they had to go through a pandemic. Then they were liberated and had to experience the wilderness for 40 years. It was in that wilderness, with the serpents and the lack of food and the lack of water, that they shaped their community and received their constitution. Likewise, sir, the great United States was shaped through the War of Independence between 1775 and 1783. But they declared their independence in 1776 while they were still fighting war. Their nation was shaped in the crucible of crisis. They did not receive a constitution until 1787. That's when the American Constitution was declared. Israel, another great nation, was shaped in the crucible of crisis. It was shaped in the urban resistance to the British occupation of Palestine, led by two underground guerrilla groups, Lehi and Ergun. Lehi headed by Yitzhak Shamir and Ergun by Menachem Begin, both of whom later became prime ministers of Israel. Israel still does not have a constitution. They declared independence. Trinidad and Tobago became a republic in 1976, but let us not forget how that started. It started in the crucible of crisis, with the constitutional crisis of 1971, when the opposition forces boycotted the elections. It was out of that the Constitution Review Commission was formed, and later on they moved to a republic. Mr. President, I believe that we are in the crucible of crisis now. We're not fighting a war against others, but we are facing an existential crisis in Barbados. And so I heard Senator Boyce speak about the energy. Perhaps this transition is not one about energy. It is one about introspection. It is one about reflection, about understanding who we are and how we will be whenever this crisis is over. What type of nation we will be. How we will forge into the future. I've said it before several times, sir, that COVID has done us a favor. We have lost a lot of our loved ones. I take this time to extend condolences to all those who have lost their loved ones in this pandemic. But before COVID-19 and before the lockdown, we had our two worst years in terms of heinous murders in this country. Gunplay was at its highest level. And what that says, sir, is that our people have lost their way. Reminds me of what the prophet Isaiah said of Israel in his time. In chapter 1 of that text, he said, the ox knows his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But my people do not know. My people do not understand. Their princes have become friends of thieves. Their prophets prophesy for hire. And the great city, the great Jerusalem, that once dispensed wisdom has become a harlot. And he didn't call for legislation. You know what he said? Come, let us reason together. Come, let us reason together. In other words, come, let us talk this through so that we can recapture this nation that we're losing. it is essential for us to use this crisis. It is essential for us to use this opportunity to shape our identity, how we see each other. It is time to reflect on those words voiced in January 20th, 1961 by the late John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Now is a time for patriotism. The current circumstances are asking us some challenging questions. It is upon that basis that I believe now is the best time. This crisis challenges us to build and work together as a community or die. It is in the crucible of this crisis that our nationalism is being summoned. It is in this crisis that our national identity must be shaped. I do not want to go into the vaccine challenge that we're having. But as I said to my congregation on Sunday, there comes a time when we must look beyond ourselves to the interests of others. When this pandemic first started, I said, we in Barbados must be very careful because of the high level of NCDs we have in this country. I said we must be very careful because of the number of children we have who are obese and overweight. And so don't fly in the air and say that the recovery rate is 98%. That's 98% worldwide. It may not be so here, given our challenges. And so I encourage people, take one for the team. Take one for the team. Take one for that person who cannot take the vaccine. Take one for those persons who have NCDs and are vulnerable, so that we can control this. When this pandemic, which every indication now seems to be threatening to be endemic, comes to an end or goes to what can be assumed to be normalcy, nations of the world will begin to claw themselves out of the mire in which they're in at this time to seek to regain the positions they held before the pandemic. And what that means, sir, that it will become a dog-eat-dog world, so get a big dog. I say this within the context of the United Kingdom is now talking about global Britain. Global Britain. Someone said global Britain is Empire 2.0. Because they haven't been able to define it yet. And we also have the other nations throughout the world who are clawing for power. In changing our head of state from a monarch to a president, we in Barbados, for the first time in just under 400 years, will be shaping our future untethered from the moorings of imperialism. The very first time ever. And that is significant, and that is necessary. This generation, we all, sit on the verge of a great transformational movement in the life of this country. And as I pointed out earlier, sir, it is not unusual for constitutions to be shaped after the transformation. The great United States of America did it. So I encourage all Barbadians within the sound of my voice to get on board You may not like the way the process is going. I challenged some aspects of it very early. When I first went on RSTAC, I said, look, we have a problem of time because of the mammoth task that was before us. And when we were not able to engage with the public as we would have wanted to, I said time is becoming timing. That's a different matter altogether. But we are where we are. And I have stuck with this process because at the end of the day, one political party will give way to another, but Barbados must survive. And that is where my heart lies. Legislation will not be everything, as I said, sir. As Senator Drakes pointed out, we have a problem with gunplay in our country. We have a lot of issues to deal with. And this is time for us to recapture the soul of this nation. And for me, that is where this process lies. And it leads me into my next question. Why not then? Why not then speaks to the date that has been proposed? Why not November 30th? I know that it has been positive, and some believe that it will diminish, and some say eventually erase the legacy of Errol Barrow. Mr. President, I cannot say what the mind of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet would have been, but I would say, if the move was meant to be for evil, and I do not believe that that was the case, but if it was meant for evil, it may well be of the nature of Genesis 50 and verse 20, where when David was reunited with his brothers, he said, don't worry about it. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. But before I deal with that, sir, Mr. President, I think there are some matters that we must come to grips with as Barbadians. All of us in here. Barbados is ideologically a one-party state. Let us not fool ourselves. Barbados is ideologically a one-party state. It is its strength and its weakness. Because oftentimes it would appear that the political divide is more contrived than anything else. And it is something that we have to focus on, especially when we're dealing with young people who see black and white. We have to be careful. That's why I said on August 5th in this Parliament a year ago, 30 out of 30 is not 100%. It's not the first time I said it this year. I said it over a year ago. And that's when you walked out, sir. And I challenged the government of the time to at least set up a lattice fence. You could see through it, but at least set up something to delineate between party and government. It is very, very important. So Barbados is ideologically a one-party state. And I'll even go further. It is impossible to expunge the legacy of Errol Barrow because every administration since his death in 1987 has functioned on the basis of Barrowism. I said it. But let us just deal with the concern at hand, that November 30th will destroy the legacy of Errol Barrow. I remember in 1987, sir, sitting in the B stand of the National Stadium at the Calypso Finals. I've never felt a bass line like that before or since. When Brian Bumba Payne came out to sing They Want to Know. He won the crown that year. But a line in that song said, They want to know why under the last government, which would have been the BLP administration which lost in 1986, why under the last government independence will come and go and no one ever mentioned Barrow. You know that line? And then he went on to say, they want to know why Errol, Walcott, and Sion, when speaking on the trade union, forgot to mention Grantley Adams. I've highlighted that, sir. In having this transition take place on November 30th, for the first time, both major political parties will be forced to celebrate together. They have all made a contribution to the progress of the nation. It will be a day. It will be a day when Barbadians will celebrate without the hindrance of partisan politics, as it should be. But let us just go a little further. Let's choose another day. Let us imagine choosing, for example, June 26th, as has been suggested by Senator Triggs, or even May 14th, or July 26th, as the leader of the opposition suggested in the other place. What do you think will happen? Let me tell you what will happen. You will have two competing national days. Not only polarization, let's get to the truth of it, because we all know what happens. You'll have two competing national days, and as it stands, November 30th is already a stretch. You know why? Fellas can't start Christmas in October. So they got some men waiting for midnight on November 30th to change out the blue and yellow lights to put in green ones and so on. What do you think will happen if you have two national days? Which one you think will lose prominence? I have nothing to say. I think that has already done so. Mr. President, as it stands, venturing into a Republican status is unknown for us. We have seen it around the world, but for us in Barbados, it is unknown. And venturing into the unknown can always be a challenge. Could there have been more public engagement? Certainly. Could there have been more sensitization? Absolutely. Should there have been? I'll be the first to say yes. But we are where we are. And this is our nation state. This is a state we all love. I encourage us to get on board and come together and make her the best she can be. There'll be problems. There would have been problems no matter what avenue was taken. Perhaps this is why it was not done sooner. Because as you would know, sir, politically, many things can be done. But there are certain things that ought not be done. Because they can be politically suicidal. I encourage people to get on board in the constitutional reforms which have been promised. And I encourage you to hold your government's foot to the fire to make sure that these reforms take place. In time to come, I believe November 30th will become a day when all across the political divide will celebrate our journey. It will be a day to look back with great pride on how we as a people have journeyed to the point where we are. And perhaps, to coin the words of the late Prime Minister David Thompson, it'll become a day when we'll be proud to wrap ourselves in the national flag. I conclude my presentation, sir, with some words from a letter written to the paper by Sir Roy Marshall back in 2012, one of the drafters of the 2004 Constitution. And he said this, sir: I pray that when we reach the milestone of a half a century of sovereignty, we will not still be found loitering on colonial premises after closing time. Barbados is a jewel that has no need of a crown. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Reverend Dr. Rogers. Senator Mr. Minard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too am privileged to be able to speak in this debate to amend the Constitution to establish a republic and to elect a president. But Mr. President, like Senator Drakes, I too feel that it is not what we want to achieve, but how we've gone about it. One of my friends likened it to a meal being offered where all the ingredients were harvested at the wrong time. They were rushed to be cooked, poorly served. You couldn't chew it, and it was eliminated. That will not be the case. We will live with it, Mr. President, and I believe that the future will lie in the constitutional reform. But Mr. President, in the last 3 months, I've had the privilege of reading a document that was published in 1970. And I want to make it a document in the House. It's the thesis of Sir Richard Cheltenham, Dr. Sir Richard Cheltenham. And it's titled Constitutional and Political Development in Barbados, 1946 to 1966. It chronicles constitutional and political development, Mr. President, in a way that is neutral, and it is hard to believe that a person who was so strongly partisan could write a document for his thesis that was so neutral and complete. And I would like to suggest, Mr. President, that once it's made a document in the House, that we should all, if possible, find some time to read at least parts of it. Mr. President, what we're going through now is not new. We've been here before. And Senator Springer gave a historical account of some of the things that transpired, and I want to add to it. And I will start on what is page 25 in this document. And it speaks to the result of the 1961 election, where the DLP won office. And they promised to give the country a written and comprehensive constitution. And that they did. And one of the first changes of importance was the renaming the Senate, or establishing the Senate. And the membership is exactly as you know it today. But at the time, the opposition objected because they felt that it would allow the government to do whatever it wanted by having the majority, and how wrong they were. And it just says that you cannot really predict the future. But Mr. President, the Independence Constitution in 1964 also came about. And today we heard Senator Boyce speak as to whether you can really revoke and retain. And I've advised by a legal luminary that yes, you can. And on the other hand, I've heard you can't. I leave that to the lawyers. Suffice it to say, we seem to have accomplished it. But I want to quote to show further that this has been, we've been here before. This is not new. And the sentiments of one leader seem to be echoed in another. And I want to quote from this document a statement made by the Right Excellent Errol Barrow in Puerto Rico. It says, "My government has given me a mandate to secure independence before the next election. If it is not granted, it will be declared, because I do not feel that we should have to ask for it." It seems like deja vu. We've been here before, and the country has not fallen apart. Sir Richard concludes in this thesis. He writes, "A chapter has closed in Barbadian political history." This is post-66. The process of decolonization that has started in 1946 has run its course. He appears to have been wrong. From what we are going through now, it has restarted. He saw and thought that independence was the end game. Republicanism appears to be where we're headed, and we should be. Mr. President, I believe that the time has come for us to have the next step, which is a Republican position. And I believe we should have a president, and I support this bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Mr. Maynard. Senator McConney.
Mr. President, thank you. And I wish to thank all of my honorable colleagues here in this chamber for their contribution. I believe that a number of the concerns and issues that were raised by a number of senators earlier were covered by others, and this has been a very long day, and we know we are heading towards curfew time. And therefore, I will not, Mr. President, seek to reiterate a number of the points that were made and refuted in many cases, and those that will still linger. As I close, though, sir, I really wish to thank Senator Rogers for his contribution with the move to the Republic not being an event, but indeed being a process, with it being more than about legislation, that legislation is not everything that we need right now, but that this country needs a soul, and we need zeal, and we need the spirit, which the Senator suggested may be recaptured in the charter that is now about to be developed. He spoke about the fact that there's a crucible of crisis facing this country right now. And he spoke about the fact that constitutions are formed even after transitions are made to different political systems or systems of things. Senator Maynard, thank you very much for reminding us that sometimes even our greatest minds and those who have been there have been able to declare the journey over before it truly is. And in citing the reference that you just made, Senator Boyce, entertaining as always, was in fine form today, and certainly sharing with us the type of energy and the type of ethos and perspective that he thinks should be brought to this entire experience. Senator Grant reminded us that the mirror image that we have been showing, that we have been seeing of ourselves is not necessarily always of our own making, but contrived by others, and that government continues to do what it needs to do to address the many priorities which Senator Drakes would have raised during her presentation. Minister Cummings spoke to us about the fact that by our own hands we can take this country forward, bringing an energy and a confidence to her presentation that I think certainly bodes well for the next generation of this country and of the emerging politicians in this country. Mr. Springer took us on an historic journey through the enslavement, from enslavement to rebellion to independence, and to this moment of republic. Senator Hunt spoke about the precedent for settling a constitution after transitions and the need for more public engagements in significant ways. And I recall him referring to the Republic of Barbados, and I just want to remind us all that the Republic of Barbados will not be the name of Barbados. We have determined that Barbados, simply Barbados, will be the name. Senator Holder spoke to us of fear. What do we fear? She talked about the spiritual and the psychological battle that is ongoing in the minds of the people of Barbados that we must overcome. And the fact, she was very impassioned, and she spoke about Barbados being the first black slave colony in the world, and yet we were the last British colony to pass an Emancipation Act, as an indication that we are still in many ways in that place on a day like today. Senator Greenidge, thank you so much for being able to address so well those concerns from a legal mind that were raised by Senator Franklin about whether or not what we were doing right now could in fact be doing, we can do legally. And Senator Greenidge made the point that the Constitution does not depend on the independence order, which was revoked, and that in fact it can have a life of its own outside of that independence order, and that in passing this bill, when we revoke that order, that in fact we can still keep the Constitution intact. He spoke of the important and most brilliant minds in the Caribbean region, both here and abroad, who have opined on this matter, and the fact that we have not gone into this lightly, but that indeed we have sought the advice of some of the best minds. I believe Senator Wiggins spoke enthusiastically about the ways in which we can continue to bring a more Barbadian identity to a number of the institutions and places that are here through the renaming process. And Senator Nurse spoke about about extending the cooling off period, and he called for greater engagement of Barbadians in the consultations. I believe, sir, I have covered most people with the exception of Senator Caswell Franklin.
You said nothing.
Sir, Senator Franklin contradicted himself on so many occasions. He talked about the haste, the indecent haste at which we were rushing to this, and the fact that there was not significant enough time for consultations and the right type of consultations through a process that he himself would have approved. Yet still, Senator Franklin was able to identify an article by himself written in 2000 and published in the newspaper. That was an extensive discourse, sir.
Point of order, sir. I know you can't say that a senator is dishonest. I wouldn't say that. But that is not what I said. I pointed out that everything happened in 2000 and then everything stopped. And then the indecent haste, that is dishonest. Because she knows what I said. And I don't expect that from an honorable senator. I do not expect that type of behavior. You know what the truth is, but you say it not. I said, and I will repeat, this matter engaged in people's attention, in 2000, then everything stopped. And then this year, you rush with a decent haste. I'm not contradicting myself. That's a misinterpretation, and I would wish that she withdraw it, because it is dishonest, sir.
No, you cannot accuse the senator
Sir,
of being dishonest.
but that point, sir.
You withdraw that, and that will struck from the record.
Sir, I want her struck from the record because she deliberately misleading the Senate. I agree with you, sir.
Just a second. You can assert that she has misinterpreted, but you cannot.
No, she's not misinterpreted.
Yes, you cannot make the assertion that any senator in here is dishonest. Any person in the House. So you withdraw that, have that struck from the record, and you can go on and make your point about it.
Sir, my point is, she knows better. What she has said is absolutely
Incorrect.
incorrect. And she knows it.
And that's your opinion.
No, sir, it's not my opinion. It is exactly what I said. If you want to go back and listen to the tape, you can.
Just a second, Senator. I've heard your point.
You know?
We cannot.
And I wish that
Senator,
you would ask her to withdraw that too, because she knows she is misleading the House. She is misrepresenting what I said in here.
Take your seat, please. We cannot at this point ask the record to verify exactly what you said. There is a difference of opinion. We're not able to pull the transcript at this time. Senator McConney, please continue. You have one interpretation of what he said. He has another interpretation, and we leave it at that. I'm not able to verify one way or the other. Senator McConney.
Thank you, Mr. President. And continuing, as I said, sir, of Senator Franklin again, saying things that are not necessarily true. Where he speaks.
Point of order, Mr. President. If you ask me to withdraw what I said, she must withdraw that I said it's not true.
Please take your seat. I will go. Senator McConney, you cannot go there. You may disagree with what is said, but to say that he's saying things that he knows not to be true would be just another way of saying it's standardized. Let's not go there. Make your assessment of his contribution before contravening the rules, please.
Mr. President, I am always guided by you, sir. But as Senator Franklin said, and I will quote, and I have it right here written in quotation marks because I would wish to be accurate, sir. This government is making minor changes and saying that will suffice. That was never the position of this government. We have always said that there will be consultation. We even gave a period of that consultation. We heard other senators in here, including those who are part of that transition commission, speak about that period of consultation and the need for us to move. So this indication that government said we are going to make some minor changes to the Constitution and that will suffice, again, sir, it is my interpretation that that is not the absolute and complete and whole and entire truth. Sir, it is very interesting as I trace the distance that Barbados has come in discussing this matter, that we still have people at this time, like the Honorable Senator Franklin, who says that we are, I'm seeking to quote him, that we have been creating something in the Barbados Labour Party's image. It is interesting, however, that in the discourse of many other senators in here, we spoke of individuals, distinguished individuals of all different parties. We spoke of commissions of different parties. Sir, We have referred in here to the Right Excellent Errol Barrow, 1920 to 1987, who indeed was part of this discourse and this discussion with regards to the Republic. It was not in his image that he was seeking to do such things. We spoke of Professor the Right Honorable Owen Arthur, 1949 to 2020, also being part of the discourse as it relates to the Republic, again, not necessarily in his own image. We spoke of the 1998 report of the Ford Constitution Review Commission, sir. We spoke also of the, again, we refer to the article that was written. I am inviting Mr. Franklin to be in the company of such great names as what I just called. We speak of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Ferndale Stewart, the Honorable Ferndale Stewart, also speaking of this matter. We currently are talking about our current Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, who is in the midst of all the conversations that have been ongoing for all of this time, have decided it is time for action in the midst of this conversation. And so this notion that it is being created in the image of the Barbados Labour Party, we see there are people that are across all political divides that have been a part of this conversation for a long time. But then we know the agenda, sir, of Senator Franklin, because he said, and again I quote, and I then challenge that we go back to the recording of this and pull this, where he says that he can support, generally he said that he wants Republican status, but in his words, not at the cost of me denying myself the pride. What this tells us is that his opinions, in my interpretation, sir, appears to be about him and not necessarily about this country and what is best for this country, but that there, in my mind, is a self-centeredness about it that we have to rise above here within this honorable chamber.
Well, that's you won't be here. Not a many politicians to you. That's what they're doing now. These people
And Mr. President, I believe at this time I should conclude this with great haste. And I want to say, sir, that as I close, permit me, sir, to reiterate what indeed the passing of this bill today is intended to do. First, revoke the Barbados Independence Order of 1966 while saving and keeping intact the Constitution, which was a schedule to that order. Two, make provisions for a Barbadian to be the head of state of Barbados and be called president. Three, to change the oath of allegiance from Her Majesty the Queen and heirs to that of the state of Barbados. Also, to ensure continuity in all of the other aspects of government and governance that would have fallen under the privileged priorities and duties of the Governor General. Some would suggest, sir, that in passing this bill today, should we so do, that we may indeed be passing the baton to a new generation of thinking and hope as it relates to governments. And I believe, sir, though, that in some cases this current generation of young people are not waiting to take a baton from us. They have already grabbed it and they're already running. And sir, one of the reasons why I come to this conclusion, I refer to a poem that was penned and it was performed in Heroes Square, Bridgetown, by a young Barbadian by the name of Cindy Celeste, who was commissioned by the National Cultural Foundation for the decommissioning of the statue of Horatio Nelson in November 2020. And this verse resonates at this time as we close this debate. It says, and today there is a difference. Today there is a change riding in the wind. After the light and dark that colors our history, we are making a step towards healing mentality, embracing and nurturing cultural identity, and loving who we are again. With these few words in my heart, Mr. President, I'm obliged to you, and I beg to move that this Constitution Amendment Number 2, Bill 2021, be read a second time.
Thank you, Senator McConnell. The question is that this bill be read a second time. Honourable senators in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Honourable senators against, please say no. Who thinks the ayes have it? Senator Buchanan.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that they do not leave the chair and the Honorable Senate resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. Senate is now in committee.
Very pleasure. The House is now in committee.
1, clauses 1 to 19.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 to 19 stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 to 19 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 20 to 30.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 20 to 30.
10, 20, yes.
20.
The question
20
is that
to
part,
30 stand part.
the question is that Part 2, clauses 20 to 30 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Constitution Amendment Number 2 Bill 2020, Act 2021.
Put the question.
The question is that this bill do now pass and be so cited. Of course, this is a constitutional amendment, and according to Section 49 of the Constitution, need to meet the prescribed two-thirds majority. Therefore, we will take a voice vote. Clerk, Mr. Clerk? Yes, indeed.
Senator Walker.
Aye.
Senator McConney,
Aye.
Senator Cummins,
Aye.
Senator Dr. Springer,
Aye.
Senator Dr. Holder,
Aye.
Senator Sands,
Aye.
Senator Grant, Senator Moore, Senator Moore. Okay, come for it. Senator Dr. Haynes,
Aye.
Senator Adams,
Aye.
Your Honor, Senator Greenwich,
Aye.
Senator Franklin,
No.
Senator Drix,
Abstain.
Senator Wiggins,
Aye.
Senator Dr. Rogers,
Aye.
Senator Hunt,
Aye.
Senator Nurse,
Aye.
Senator Boyce,
Aye.
Senator Maynard,
Aye.
Senator Tate,
Aye.
Mr. President, the results of the division, 18 honorable senators voted in favor. There was 1 no and 1 abstention. It therefore means that the required majority of 2/3, 14, was easily satisfied, and the bill reached the threshold required by the Constitution for passage.
Thank you, honorable senators. Accordingly, this bill is so passed and so cited.
Mr. President, this brings us to the end of government business for today, and I beg to move that this Senate do now adjourn. Sine die.
Before we move to the question, I want to thank honorable senators for their steadfast commitment to duty. It was a long day, it was a substantive day. Thank the staff as well for their continued support. The question is that this, the Senate do now adjourn. Sine die. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. The things the ayes have it. The Senate stands so adjourned.